Hello.
Welcome back, guys, For the Birds, episode 3. And so essentially what we're going to do with this episode is we are just going to look at the comments that you guys gave us on our last video because we want to encourage discussion and we want to actually talk with you guys and see what you guys thought. So that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to look at those comments and basically see what you guys thought. So you just want to get right into it. Cool. So last week's episode, we talked about the Second Amendment, gun rights, Parkland shooting, all that good stuff. Leave anything out?
No, not that I think of. No.
So, essentially, we're just going to rattle through these comments. Let's start with Taylor. And Taylor said, I think it would be awesome if you have more visual cues and sound cues to spice up the content. Otherwise, I think I would listen to your channel more while I was working on studio projects. Thanks, Taylor. That's a good comment. We talked about earlier when we were going through these. We don't really. It's a vodcast.
Yeah, it's more of it's you can listen if you'd like. It's supposed to be used as a podcast, I guess. If you want to watch, you can. But obviously, there's no pressure for you to watch. You can just listen instead. There's not a whole lot going on visually, unless you're really looking to see where we get our facts from, which we'll post, little links to and things like that here and there. But other than that, a lot of it's just listening. So
I mean, I use podcasts a lot, like I think we said the Joe Rogan.
Yeah, Joe Rogan. I only listen to Joe Rogan,
podcast.
And Dan Carlin does a 5-hour that's like a legit podcast, but he posts them on YouTube, and I only listen to those as well. Those are really good podcasts to look at, though. So if you're looking for any to look at, those are good as well.
As far as like visual stuff, we've already, and I hope you guys can tell when we start changing camera angles and stuff, we've already upgraded cameras. We're to tripods and actual video cameras instead of GoPros and 2x4s and boxes and stuff. So
moving up.
Yeah, we're already moving on up. So, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But again, thanks Taylor for the comment. Next one was from Justin, and this is in probably more towards you, Liam, about last week. And he said, "I see where you guys are coming from, and definitely think you have valid arguments. Thanks. I think you also need to be careful dismissing the effect of bullying and just the way we treat each other as a society and the impact that has on others. Someone doesn't just wake up and decide that they're going to make that kind of decision. I think there's a lot more to the mental aspect that you guys touch on that I think we need to talk about." He said that also the power of social media is another way that we tend not to think of. So like you guys said, there's so many things that need to be factored in. I would hate to dismiss that side of things.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty right.
Yeah, I mean, basically I went off of the, we were talking about convocations in context.
Yeah.
Like at school. Excuse me. And essentially what I was talking about was that I worked on student council and stuff at our high school, which Justin went to our high school as well. So he graduated a couple years before us, but so same community. Working in student council with the convocations and things we had at school, I was a part of that before and after the convos. We helped set some of those up, and we did different things with them. And so I noticed a trend, or what seemed like a trend to me, where about every other convo was about bullying or just the general be nice to people. And I think it would have been a lot more interesting to. I'm not trying to downplay bullying in any way, shape, or form. It didn't happen to me very much in high school, and if it did, I have pretty thick skin anyway. I was able to just kind of dismiss it. That's kind of my sense of humor anyway. I tend to joke around with people a lot and kind of pick fun at them or make fun of them in a way, and I expect that in return. That's just how my humor works. But back to the whole convo thing, essentially it seemed as though as every other convo was like that, and I would have liked to have seen more convos, like do a convocation on like balancing a checkbook or having a budget or something that's like
life skills.
Applicable outside of school that we weren't going to learn in our actual academics. And I think that would have been something that I would have taken more out of rather than just hearing the same thing sort of over and over again. So I wasn't trying to downplay that at all. I think it is important, especially with social media now. 12 to 14-year-olds can have these profiles and can say whatever they want, and they don't see the ramifications of how that might affect somebody, and so then they can end up actually hurting somebody's feelings or making them feel bad about themselves or whatever it is. So definitely not trying to downplay that at all. Just
and Wayne and I after that podcast were like, dang, that was maybe a misuse of words, and what we came to the conclusion was, bullying and picking on somebody are two completely very different things. Because I mean, we pick on each other all the time, but bullying is like that. Like you are purposely trying to ruin somebody's day and like demoralize them and put yourself above somebody else, and it's like that. That's not what I don't think we were trying to portray. So I don't know. You got any comments on that one?
I think it's important to state that, like, in the model we've been using, where we pick a topic, we might brush against a different topic and mention it briefly. We may not be able to, like, fully flesh out our views or ideas. So it's important to, like, make note of that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna touch things that we can't give the appropriate time it deserves.
Sure. We might be able to do that in the future. We're talking about that, especially later in this video. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But yeah.
Yeah. So, good comment, Justin. Thanks. Next two are actually from the same guy. This is from Joe, and he says he's got 2 different points. The breakdown of the family unit has more to do with the proliferation of violence than any other measurable metric. The liberal world can't accept this because then they would have to agree with the premise that family, as defined by God, is the best model for raising healthy and emotional stable children going into adults. I completely agree with that. I think that's a great comment. What do you guys think?
Good.
Like he said, immeasurable metric. Like, I think we're going to try to stand behind points that we can defend with metrics, and anything we can't, then I think you guys can just accept that it's our opinions, like, and that's I don't know, available to scrutiny by you guys or whatever. So, but I like where he's going. I've seen a shift. And even like intellectuals who say Christianity, whether you want to admit that it's legitimate or not, has got a lot of things right. Almost everything right as far as how you should live in a society.
The Judeo-Christian morals has a lot to do with what we deal with in a day-to-day
Even atheists will admit that.
Yeah.
Let's say even I was talking with one of our buddies that's over here a lot the other day. I was like, he's a psychology major, and Jordan Peterson, we were talking like he adheres to a lot of the Christian values and a lot of the Christian just ways of life, but isn't actually a Christian. And he's very pro that style of life. And so it's interesting that, like you said, even atheists like follow that lifestyle without believing in it,
having a faith. Yeah.
I mean the like family structure and stuff like that. We could do a little different video on that.
Exactly. We're always going to be touching on subjects that we could actually delve into a lot more. That's just that's the nature of the beast, I think.
Because you brought up the fact that this is these school shooting things are an American problem. It's not really a worldwide problem, and so and obviously Joe brings up a good point here with it starts at the home.
Yeah.
It's not a pattern. It was 26 out of the last 27 school shooters or mass shooters were raised without their father.
Yeah.
Well,
he says immeasurable metrics, but I'm sure we could find some statistics to back up. It may not like prove that point, but I'm sure there's tons of statistics that could back that up.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, we know Joe personally, all 3 of us do, but
it's kind of what he does.
Yeah.
It's like a family life ministry.
Yeah. So like that kind of idea, like he's gonna be able to provide that aspect.
He wants to be on the show.
Yeah.
Like
we're
really
hoping
badly.
We're hoping to have guests on pretty soon. We're looking into that more as we continue to have just different voices, different people from different, what would you call it? Disciplines.
Or different like stages of life.
Stages of life, different disciplines, different outlooks on life, and have those people on to be able to discuss their take on certain issues, especially in differing issues, to be able to like where we differ on opinion or view on something, to be able to get a wider range of different ideas and viewpoints on different topics. So
I mean, and
that's
we're
essentially the goal.
Talk about that here in a minute.
Yep.
But I mean, essentially, we're 3 college guys like for the most part, a lot of our opinions and
Gonna be
thoughts are going to be similar.
We all grew up together, so we want to have a differing views as well. So
yeah. So Joe's loved his first comment. His second comment goes to the lobbying topic,
which I think he's correcting us on it. I thought about this earlier.
Oh, okay.
I think the way we portrayed lobbying was incorrect in the first video, but I don't think it was intentional. I think it just kind of came out and then we just moved on from it. Again, multiple topics at once, kind of hard to cover, certain details, and he kind of just set it straight, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I'll read it, and it's going to be on the screen as well. He goes, you can't blame the NRA because they don't buy politicians any more than Planned Parenthood or any other liberal lobbying group does. He goes, by their very definition, lobbying groups find politicians who already think the way that the lobbying group does and then choose to give money to them. He says that lobbying groups don't look to turn politicians with money, bribery. He says that they look for ones who already hold similar views and support them.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, one of us said, I'm not certain which one, we'll have to go back through and look, but I think one of us said something about, when we were talking about the Planned Parenthood and the NRA and how they lobby, I think it might have even been me making the mistake of saying that essentially lobbyists were going out and spending money towards candidates that didn't necessarily adhere to the beliefs.
Trying to turn them.
But essentially what it is it's just, you already believe this way or your constituents believe this way. Here's a little bit of money for staying on that path. Kind of, I don't know. It's.
Well,
you brought up earlier. Yeah.
I think we said the base level, ground level politicians are asked about their fundraising capabilities.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the first things like a mayor of a small town would be asked. Yeah.
So, I mean, promising campaign funds could give.
Being able to fundraise is what puts those people in power at this point. It's not necessarily. I mean, it is votes, but in a roundabout way, the more and more politics in the 21st century looks more like who can fundraise the best.
Yeah.
Which is kind of disheartening. We've discussed that we don't necessarily want any money in politics.
Yeah, personally, I would like to see all money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye to the personal finance aspect of running for different levels of office, but.
So yeah, that was Joe's second comment, and like I said, we appreciate that one. I also had a conversation with somebody that I know on Twitter. It was actually it was a direct message. So, but he was watching the show. I just wanted his opinion and stuff, and he brought up a really interesting point. So I'm going to read it, and it goes like this.
Which we initially thought was we misunderstood it.
Yeah,
originally.
we were totally confused.
I was so confused when you sent me the screenshot of the first one. I had no idea what was going on. It was just like out of context. I was so confused. I just woke up actually. Yeah. And then I started looking through it again, and I was like, "Oh wait, he's actually I think he's
complimenting.
Not necessarily complimenting, more just like, hey, I think you made a valid point here that you didn't necessarily notice, which is gonna happen so much in these until we get a better system figured out." But sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, he said, about halfway through the video, he goes, "But I think you guys unknowingly made a terrific argument for abolishing the Department of Education on the federal level." And I do think that we made that. I went back and watched. We made that point, and then just kind of.
It was unknowingly. I don't think we necessarily sat and talked about it.
No, we did. That was not like a planned point.
Yeah, no, not at all.
What do you guys think, though?
We discussed earlier. I think what was it? Something about sample size.
Power to the states.
Yeah, essentially, if you move power to the states, if nothing else, which there will be plenty else, like pro-wise, in order to do it, but. If nothing else, you would get a larger sample size to see what works and in what demographics. So, like Indianapolis, we live in Indiana, obviously. So, in Indianapolis, they could look at what Chicago's doing or what Detroit or any other big city is doing and saying, okay, well, their system works and what we've been trying has been working for the last couple of years, so we're going to swap over to theirs. While a school from where we're from, a more rural area, could say, hey, we've got the best program, we've got the best numbers in the nation, we're doing the best, and then other rural areas could model after what we're doing, and essentially it would just be, look what they're doing, it works out really well, we're gonna model off that, because I think it's very different, the school wise, public inner city schools and public rural schools are gonna be drastically different, in just what it looks like and geography and the demographic of those places, and so
if you look at the U.S. on a global scale, education-wise, we're not the top.
No.
America likes to be number one. And I mean, we haven't seen that in a while. So, I think for any system that's failing, it's not fair to prop it up. give it a
Yep.
crutch to lean on. Like,
Mhm.
let's try something different.
And I
But
think-
I don't know. I don't know if I'm all for the complete
abolishment.
abolishment. Yeah.
of. I mean, I think if you're gonna switch to a different system, then there needs to be something in place when one goes away. Like, it would just be
Yeah.
education and free fall. So, but yeah, I'm all for trying something different. I think there's been some talk about President Trump and what he's doing with education funding and stuff. I think he's prepping us for a transition. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll see in the next couple months, but
Yeah.
It's all a lot of speculation right now.
Yeah,
right?
from what we've understood, well, he did a little bit last year. We were actually going to make a video on education as a whole, but there's not a lot going on with that, so we kind of strayed away from that this week.
Not a lot of concrete facts yet.
Yeah, not a lot of concrete facts and not a lot of things that we felt like we could, at least I personally felt like I could accurately cover and like have an actual opinion on. So we kind of like jumped away from that. We had another topic too that we actually ran a video of, and then at the end of it, we're kind of like, it ended up branching out way too much. And so we kind of decided that we were going to scrap that and we were going to just do this video and kind of play around this idea. And that's essentially where we're at now. But back to the education thing for just a second. I agree. I think that what he's doing is interesting, to say the least. I think that his education department advisor or secretary of education, I'm not entirely sure what her title is, Betsy DeVos. But to me, it's just like, it seems not necessarily shady, but it's just like, come on, like you could do way better than that.
Secretary of Education.
Secretary of Education. But it's just like, from what I understand, and this is just speculation, I'm not entirely certain, but she has money in charter schools, and that's where a lot of the money is being funneled.
Mhm.
It seems pretty sketchy. Like, just chill out with that. Maybe work towards something that is more of a common goal rather than just, let's dump a bunch of money in charter schools and pull money from
Yeah.
public schools. Maybe try and figure out a better system, but charter schools have been up and down too. I don't know. It's really weird. Like I said, I don't want to get into it too much because that's kind of a topic that we had done some research on but didn't really want to finalize it, so we're not going to do that right yet. We'll get to it, though, for sure.
Yeah, so that was, guys, that was a comment for last week's video. We enjoyed them.
Mhm.
They were really good, actually, for really our first video of comments. That could have been really anything. But those are actually, like, really good, constructive comments. We loved, obviously, sitting here talking about them.
And we're going to try and do that, consistently.
And so let's go ahead and move on into what, the last bit of this video
Yeah.
is what are, like, for the first two videos, we've given, like, 30 seconds or so at the beginning of what we are and who we are, and let's actually kind of tell them what this is. Like, why are we doing this? Do you want to do why the three of us individually are doing
I
this?
think you should touch on conversationally wise. Like,
Yeah.
what do you, like, how do you see that incorporated with the comments and how that can work out? And then we can kind of go from there. I think that's the best course of
Mhm.
action.
Like, we enjoy talking to each other, talking about stuff. We thought it would just be like cool if we just put a camera in front of it, but it's kind of like turned into something where we would like to see a response from you guys. Like, we have our opinions, I'm sure you do have your own opinions too, so we thought, like, what's the best way to communicate with the fan base, and right now it seems like through the comments of the videos, so make sure to read them, especially if there's something that is relevant to a topic we talked about or whatever. I mean, yeah, we want you to be part of our conversation, so.
Yeah.
I like what you said. I think it was in the first video that we're really doing this a lot to show viewers that you can sit down and have a conversation about things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously, we want that conversation with us to continue on out into the comments.
And not only that, we're trying to get it to where it continues and there's a flow to it.
Mm-hmm.
So almost like if you were to sit down and just hit your autoplay on YouTube or whatever, and you were to watch episode number 1, it would kind of just play in as a long conversation that's drawn out. We want to tie into the previous videos, we want to tie into the future videos, and kind of work our way through it that way. But what we've kind of come to the conclusion of is we're never going to be able to keep up with relevant enough information to produce an hour or so long vodcast, is what I've been calling them. It's kind of a video podcast, but what I've been calling them is a vodcast. And
Is that what the kids use these days?
I don't know. I said something. I said it as an accident a couple weeks ago, and I was like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna stick with that. But so this podcast thing, like, it's going to be hard for us to keep up with relevant information that's factual and only an hour long. So like the topic we were discussing today, the two topics that we were trying to record today,
Just couldn't have done
there
it.
was one that wouldn't have made it to an hour, and there was one that we could have gone on about for about 4 hours if we really had, but it wasn't as factually based. It was more opinion based and kind of just more not intellectually based,
Concepts.
but just
Yeah.
conceptually based. Yeah, that makes
Big
more sense.
idea stuff.
Big idea kind of things. And so what we want to do is we want to leave the hour-long podcasts or vodcasts up to you guys. So each week we're going to check back and we're going to see, not necessarily in the comment section, we want you to comment about what you'd like us to see or to see us talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like education, because that was the topic that we couldn't quite get enough with. But if you were to do a specific instance or ask a question that involves education, we'll just blow through, here are the facts about this specific and how this might actually affect other parts of the government or how it could affect other things. We would love to do that. That would be great. The other topic we were going to talk about had to do with this kind of new age feminism kind of movement, and that was way too broad. So if you had been able to kind of pinpoint a certain issue in that movement that you want us to talk about, we'd love to sit down and go through as much facts and conceptual stuff about that as we could. But I think one of the ideas we talked about was maybe doing like once a week doing the hour podcasts, and then once a month doing like a 2 to 3 hour podcast, maybe even in a series where we talk about the big conceptual things and actually go into like, this is what it really looks like in the bigger picture. And we could do like, a couple vodcasts as a series or 2 or 3 as a series, and then move on to the next series the next couple of months and actually make it.
Well, because, in a week's time, because that's we film every Thursday and we post every Monday. In a week's time, it's
and we get together every Tuesday to try and figure out
Yeah.
the next topic, and we're always having trouble now,
well,
especially.
in that time frame, unless President Trump's on a roll,
Yeah.
there's
Or-
not enough
Or somebody fires
stuff.
nukes.
Yeah,
There's nothing
exactly.
going on that we could actually cover.
Now, if it was the election, obviously we'd be
Sure,
here
we could
every
just
night.
we could just hit back to back to back topics, and maybe once the election comes up or
I mean,
whatever,
when I
we
say
can hit
we're
there, but-
struggling for topics, no, we could find stuff to talk about, but we're trying to stick to what we said we are, which is opinions that aren't respected, that aren't valued, that are just kind of getting trampled over because it's coming either from our generation or it's coming from a viewpoint that people don't agree with.
Sure, that was more than. We're going to try and take a factual avenue with those same thoughts and opinions. We're going to look everything up, as unbiased as possible at the beginning, and kind of figure out where we're going to lie in that mess, and figure out what we're gonna share. The other thing we want to do, we were talking about guests.
Yeah,
I think
that'd be awesome.
I think what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and get the guests lined up on the hour podcasts. So not certain what that looks like yet, but there's a possibility for maybe, again, just possibility, just speculation, but we're just telling you where we're coming from. An idea of like doing a main hour podcast in a week, and then also doing like an hour with a guest in the same evening or something, and having the two to be able to upload different points during the week, that kind of thing, to have some stockpiled interviews, just different things, get different perspectives and different disciplines in on different
Well,
ideas.
because we've talked, with that, we had the idea of doing the feminism discussion. It's like we probably need to have a woman here to talk about that
Sure,
with us.
exactly. And it's, yeah, and I agree with that. It wasn't so much an issue of we can't talk about it. We could. It just
It was
would make
huge.
more sense, and it would be more defined if we had somebody who had more insight on that
Mm-hmm.
movement. And so, there's a couple different people that we had kind of talked around about different people we could have on for that. And I've had 4 or 5 people that
Me
I've
too.
known on my Snapchat that have gotten a hold of me and said, when can I be on? And I appreciate that a lot. We're going to try and figure out a way that we can work it into where it makes sense with the videos we're recording, and try and get topics that are, people that we're interviewing that are on topic or kind of flow with what we're trying to do, and get some people involved and actually make it a conversation with our community and the people that we're close with. And I think that's the best way to handle it.
Yeah. Any other big ideas you guys want to throw on out there?
No. I mean, not unless, are we gonna talk about the idea of kind of breaking off into facets later, or is that
We can do that now.
okay? Essentially,
I'm gonna check the camera real quick.
yeah, you go for it. Essentially, we're hoping at some point to have the possibility of breaking into different niches in the podcast. So I really enjoy like politics, economics, the historical side of things. Mike really likes sports and some other aspects. So we're looking into maybe at some point being able to transition into this is kind of our weekly meeting, and we'll discuss certain things that are said in the comment section, or we'll continue our series. But then in our own free time, we'll record our own individual portions where we'll have our own thing. So if history is your thing and I'm covering a history series and I do about an hour a week, then you can come watch what I'm talking about, but you can also watch, our weekly update kind of thing. So this will essentially be what our weekly update would look like, and then we'll kind of branch off into our own set things where it's just one of us, maybe with somebody we're talking to, a guest or something like that. But that's essentially what we've kind of dreamed up as being the end goal here, is kind of just a community of people who are talking about different ideas and being able to express those ideas factually and be able to actually have a conversation about these
Essentially,
different topics.
like, we just want to get to the point where we can give people a platform.
Sure, that too. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah, different people that we know that have really good
Yeah.
insight on different things, be able to actually come up and talk about different things.
And, you've talked, if you want to take it, you can, but, like, this isn't our job. I'm a full-time student, architecture major, like, this is...
I'm a
I don't-
full-time employee.
I really don't have time for this. He's a full-time employee. It's like, this isn't our job. It's just something that we enjoy. It's fun.
Mhm.
We spend probably total 3 hours a week or so doing this, and
Besides editing.
yeah, that takes a while. But this isn't our job, and it's just we want to show you that you guys can do this kind of stuff too. It's just research. It's just looking into things. But yeah,
That's about it.
that's about it.
Appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you guys tuning in.
Keep the comments coming. Like Liam said, go ahead and drop a comment if you've got something that you would like to be discussed.
Every week, please.
Yeah, seriously, every
It'll
week.
make our job easier in figuring out narrowing a topic,
Yeah.
because that's been the issue that we've run into, is we don't know what specific topics to talk about. So give us a specific question or topic, and we'll absolutely visit that and look into it.
Yeah, and keep the comments rolling for what we do talk about.
Yeah,
We
give us
love
a
it.
series too. Give us a series of, like, this is what I want to see in history, or something that we can talk about for hours, and we'll do the research on it. We'll actually start putting that kind of stuff out. So, yeah, let us know.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. That's episode 3. Sorry it's a little short, but that's all we got for you this week, and we will see you next week.